Welcome to our cook along for this month. I'm so glad that you are joining us today. For anyone that is new here, my name is Edith. I'm a registered dietitian at Healthy Mission Dietitian, and our goal is to help make food simple, joyful, and nourishing, no matter what stage of your health journey that you are in. Today's cook along is extra special because we're featuring an amazing intern of mine, Jocelyn, and she is going to walk us through a delicious recipe that's straight from EatLove, which is the meal planning platform that we use with our clients. It helps people to stay on track and feel confident in the kitchen and hopefully make meal planning easier. So without further ado, I will pass this off to Jocelyn.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jocelyn. I'm currently in my second year of my master's program at USC, and thankfully, I get the pleasure of working with Edith and getting to know some of the patients that she's also working with as well. So hopefully, I get to be an RD in the next year, but I will be supporting and working for this cook along. So today's we're going to be focusing on one of the recipes that's on Eat Love, and it's the egg drop soup recipe. So it's kind of Chinese inspired. So I thought that it would be nice to have a cultural twist. However, also it's October, it's getting to fall time. Like one of our participants said, it's time for soup season. So I think this would be a great recipe to work on. So we're going to be doing the egg drop soup recipe. I have all the ingredients today that's prepared. The differences that I will be creating with this recipe, I will also be explaining as to why I'm using it. And it's a pretty simple recipe. It takes about 5 minutes to prep. I'll probably take a little longer because I'll be talking at the same time. And then in total, probably let's say about 20 minutes that I'll take for this whole recipe. So it's very easy, it's very simple, hopefully it's very achievable. It's something that my family sometimes we do include in our dishes and one of our soup dishes as well. It could be a standalone soup or it could also be a side to any of your meals as well. So I'm just gonna get along with it today. So we'll be cooking together and hopefully you'll be enjoying everything. So the first thing we're going to do, because with every soup, it does take some time for things to boil. So we're going to be preparing our boiled pot of water. So far, I have about 3 cups of water. I'm going to add an extra cup. However, I wanted to show you the measurements. This is my station. This is my current pot of water, so you can kind of see that. But I also have a prepared extra cup of water that I will also be adding. So we're going to be doing 4 cups. This is our fourth. Hopefully you can see the line right there. We're going to add this as well, but I'm going to reserve maybe about a fourth left, just so that I can use it to mix with my cornstarch slurry that I'll be doing later. So I'm going to be adding about 3/4 into it. There you go. So we're going to reserve this much for a little bit later. And then with the chicken broth, I know that we said that we were going to use chicken broth and it's going to be a low sodium chicken broth in the recipe. However, I don't have that on hand and I kind of wanted to make this as realistic as possible. So I actually have this paste. It's called Better Than Bouillon. And it's kind of just like it's also like the bouillon cubes. It's just a paste instead. So this is the nutrition facts on it. So something that to point out, the actual sodium content is 350 milligrams. So it says it's about 50% of a 2000 calorie diet. So it's something to consider if you are looking for something that's a lower sodium, maybe use less than a teaspoon. Teaspoon is the actual serving size for it, if you actually do want to use it. And I believe this is also from Costco. So you can get that. I'm going to be using about, since I have about 4 cups in here, or I will be having 4, I'm going to be doing the proper serving size. So I'm going to do 4 teaspoons. And this one I store in the refrigerator after I open it. So we're going to try to get as much as we can.
And I would say if you're following a low sodium diet, that 1 teaspoon, 350 milligrams can definitely still fit. And then just to put this into perspective, you're not drinking this whole entire pot of soup at one time. So you just want to think about that. It may seem like quite a bit of sodium that she's putting in there, but if you split it into different, like 1 cup servings, for example, it's not going to be a high sodium soup for you.
There's also a little bit of salt that was added to the recipe that it called for extra salt. I'm not going to add that because I know for me, I'm okay with the amount of sodium that's already in the bouillon. You also don't have to add it, but if you like the extra flavoring and it's okay for your own benefit, then it's more than welcome to also use that as well. So I'm going to boil all of this and leave this all to the side. And then keep it at boiling, and then we're going to turn it down later on. So we're going to cover that for now, and then I'm going to move along to the actual cutting portion. So now that I'm done with this, I'll leave this off to the side. I'm going to also keep my reserved water, and we're going to go to this station. So hopefully you can see this. So with all recipes, you kind of want to wash your hands. So I'm going to do that really fast. Just for extra sanitary purposes, and I have my hair up, so everything is all safe. If this is also going to be shared with other people as well.
Also, for the soup, if you wanted to make this vegetarian, you could definitely use a veggie broth. I've also used shiitake mushrooms and like daikon as my own broth flavoring as well.
Yeah. Also don't have to use a broth. You could just use water as well. It's just if you want extra flavors, those are also very helpful to also include. So we're going to transition to the actual cutting skills. And just to kind of remember for proper knife technique, what you do is you hold the blade, but right where, like, not the actual handle, but like right where the divot is. And you grab with your other 3 fingers and you hold it like this. So this will give you the most safest and the proper hold. So when you cut, I'm going to use my ginger first. So ginger is what it's calling for, but it's only for about 1/8 teaspoon of ground ginger, but I like ginger, so I'm going to add more. So we're going to do maybe about a little bit more, maybe first. And sometimes you can keep the skin on it, and it's asking to keep to just do brown. So if you wanted to keep the skin off, a technique that I do, which when you grab a spoon of the skin, you take the spoon and you carve it. And that's like the easiest way to get the skin off if you don't want that to be in your soup. So I'm just going to do a little bit.
It's such a nice flavor. It's got a little spiciness to it. I like to just actually eat ginger pieces.
Yeah, so you can just carve it and leave that to the side. Ginger is also very anti-inflammatory, so if you are worried about anything or if you're sick, it's also very useful. So I'm just doing a technique where I'm cutting it very slowly, but also I'm keeping my hands up. I have nails, so it's a little bit harder, but the proper technique is to basically have your nails never get cut, but always touched by one of your knuckles. So that's always a little bit more helpful. And you want to go in a slow forward motion so it can get you slices. So I think that's actually enough for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dice these into little slivers. And you can also do a rocking motion, that helps as well. And then it gives you little pieces. Let's do the rest as well. And the rest of the recipe also calls for some eggs and some chives. Chives always add extra flavor to your meals without adding extra salt or extra seasoning. So that's also something that's very helpful. But this, I'm just going to go back and forth just to get them into smaller pieces. You don't have to, but I also like my ginger more rounded. So I'll just be working on that for a little bit. And in general, with soups, you can also think about how to use them in bulk. Right now, this recipe calls for about 2 servings of soup. And so you don't have to complete it in one. You can always space it out. So whenever you save it, maybe Edith can pull up the resource handout for storage in terms of if you want to freeze it or if you want to refrigerate it as well. And typically, if you want to put it in the refrigerator, it calls for about maybe 3 to 4 days that you should keep it in there. And then if you want to actually put it in the freezer, it can last up to 1 year. And sometimes, soups come in huge portions. Our soup today is very small, so I'm not going to really need to save it. Or, I can share it with my siblings because they're here today. But that's something that you can also put into individual portions as well, so you can keep it for longer. So now that I have all of my minced and finely chopped ginger, I'm going to use the back of my knife. And you know, sharper knife typically is a safer knife, except always be careful no matter what if you are near a knife. And I'm going to put that in an extra bowl. So having your ingredients spaced out and having it planned is also helpful when it comes to making recipes a little bit faster. I'm going to now do my chives. So these are actually chives that my sister grew in like our backyard. She just started a mini garden, so she's been enjoying that. But I just watched these and now we're going to cook them. Typically chives are used in a lot of Asian cooking and they add a lot of flavor. We usually use it with like omelets or anything with like an egg. That's always we like. You can add it in any way. So I'm going to chop that in half because they're kind of longer pieces. I kind of want to add it to the next one, cut them a little bit more, and then add it to the next one. And then now that we have kind of like everybody in one little area, we're just going to do kind of small little chops, and that's going to give us little pieces. And then I'm moving my hands back. You can also move the food forward. I personally don't like to move the food. I like to move my knife. So it's really for preference, but just be careful whenever you're using your knife as well. And if you have any questions, you can always check that. And so these are my chives. So I'm going to put them to a little container as well. Hopefully you can see all of this as well, right? Yeah. Yes. You can see that right now the pot is boiling. It's been probably about 5 minutes because it's a smaller pot and my flame's pretty high. I'm going to bring it down, actually. We're going to bring it to a medium heat, and hopefully it will slowly simmer. I actually added a little bit of extra water in case it was over boiling, so you can see that. Now we're going to move on to the eggs. So I have 2 eggs and it calls for actually an extra yolk. I didn't want to add it just because if you crack the egg, then you have your egg white. What do you do with the extra egg white? You could cook it up. That's fine. But I kind of don't want to do that. So I'm going to just use the 2 eggs and it should be adequate for the actual recipe that we're doing today. So my fork. And typically what I do with eggs is I bang it on a flat surface. And if I don't want to, dirty a flat surface, because we want to make sure everything's all clean, I bring it and I tap it on the side. So I'm going to do that. And if you ever have any extra little shells, I just use my finger. If you don't want to use your finger, you can use a fork. And if you don't want to use that, you can use an extra shell to pick up the other shell. Sometimes, I have to use what I should pick up. And we'll do the same thing for this one. Now that we have these, I'm going to wash my hands because eggs and salmonella can be there. So let's wash it and throw away the shell. Eggs are a great source of protein. So if you are not an animal meat lover, you can choose eggs instead. It's not plant-based, unfortunately. So, but there are other options to swap it out. So if you prefer beans or if you prefer tofu is a good alternative, especially in Asian cuisine. So now that I have them cracked, we're going to whisk it up. And I'm just going to do this until it's well combined. So I wonder, how do you guys use eggs in your cooking? And what kind of soups do you like as well? So you can think about that while I'm also whisking my eggs. So we want it to be not too frothy, but enough where it's well combined. So the reason why we're using eggs is that we're going to make it so it actually creates little ribbons into our soup. This also adds a little more protein to our meal as well. So there's that. And now what we're going to do, since it's kind of frothy, but it's decently combined, I'm happy with where it is at. Right now my stovetop is boiling a little bit, so I'm going to bring it down to a lower medium heat. A little hot, so just be careful always and grab a little pot holder if needed. We're going to lift it And I'm gonna bring it to the side. So I'm not sure if you can see, I'll bring my computer so you can look. But there's my little pot of soup. You can see that all of the bouillon did combine. I'll check it again later. But what we're gonna do now is we're gonna add the ginger and the chives into the soup. So we're gonna add these two. We're gonna add it to the soup. Just be careful of the steam because steam also can burn you if it's too high. Those are combined. I'm gonna leave these in my little sink so that those can be warm. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna bring that back to a boil. So boiling, you can tell it's like a rumbling. You can tell when soup is typically boiling if it's rumbling, but rumbling with larger bubbles. So you kind of want to bring it back to this. So the reason why we're going to do that is because we're also going to mix in the egg as well. So let me grab that. Actually, right before we do that, we're actually going to make the cornstarch slurry. So let me add. The cornstarch slurry typically will thicken up the soup, so it's not as thin. Sometimes you can choose the texture. So this is the extra water that we reserved from before. And the recipe calls for 1 tablespoon and a half of cornstarch. So we're going to grab my little tablespoon. This is my cornstarch. And we're going to just grab extra. It's going to be a lot, but it's okay. Don't worry. Add it to the water. And then we're going to do half of that. So personally, I just use the thin one. Sometimes I don't want to clean extra, but I'm going to bring it. And you want to mix this before you add it into your soup because typically these will clump up in your soup. So if you have a fork, which I'm not using a fork right now, it's more preferred, but you can always do it with this. Have you ever tried like the trick cornstarch? Typically, if you punch it, it will sometimes like be really thick. But if you just leave it, mix it slowly, it will become a little paste. So the reason why we also want to bring the soup into a boil is just because that the soup will not thicken if you do not have the with the cornstarch. You need it to be boiled first. So we're gonna put this in first before we actually add the egg yolk, and we'll just redo that. So right now you see it's boiling. We're gonna add the cornstarch into it. I'll make sure it's boiling continuously. And this is like my little soup spoon. Make sure that let me put the rest of it in. And then we're just going to bring that to a boil. So typically when you boil the cornstarch, it will look still very thin, but when it cools down, it will have a thickened texture, and that's where you'll get the actual thicker soup. Perfect. I'm going to bring it down just a little bit because when I do my egg, I don't want it to overcook. So now my flame is lower. I'm going to mix it one more time. And then let's grab my egg. So I'm going to have to do a certain technique. So you're going to want to have your soup in a swirl. So if you can do this at the same time, I'm holding my phone, so maybe it's a little harder. So we're going to swirl it first. And then we're going to hopefully have it continuously swirling while I add the eggs as well. I'm going to take this and we're going to pour it, and hopefully it becomes little ribbons. Let me do it one more time. Usually you have 2 hands, so it's a little easier. It's okay. I'm going to do it this way. Mixing it one more time. And you can see the little ribbons that formed from it. We're going to add the rest. There we go. So that's going to be the recipe itself. And if you boil it back up, it might be overcooking the eggs, but this should be okay to have right now. So let me mix it. So this is the actual egg drop soup. You can tell it's kind of thicker, slightly thicker, but this is the end of our recipe actually. So I'm going to grab a bowl so we can plate it. But see how simple and easy it is? It has your protein. It has great flavor as well to it. It's a lower sodium to normal sodium recipe. So just beware. And I didn't add the extra salt to it. So you can always omit or add it depending on your preference. I'm going to turn off the heat because the egg is already cooked. Egg cooks very quickly. So
Super simple recipe. I know she took a little bit of an extra step by chopping up the ginger, but you can definitely just purchase ground ginger from the seasoning or spices aisle. And then you can also modify this with like more chives, more green onion. I also like to put white pepper into my soup as well, but that definitely looks very tasty and the eggs look very fluffy. And then with the cornstarch, that's kind of up to you and your preference as to whether or not you do want it thicker. Some people prefer a thinner soup. Some people do like that thicker style. So that can be kind of modified based on your specific preferences. And then
and if
EatLove also offers substitutes as well. I think Jocelyn may have mentioned it, but if you didn't want to use whole eggs or you have egg beaters instead, or just egg whites or some sort of other alternative, you can also do that as well.
Um, if you want to add more chives to this to make it look all cute and pretty, I actually don't have enough, but we have two little ones that we can add to it. So let me show you our little bowl. It's a thicker consistency and it's something that's hopefully easy to also prep and use at another point in time. So you can always think about that. You can add frozen veggies to it. You can add tofu to it, anything that will make it a little bit more helpful for you. And that's
Yeah,
it.
some other things to add to it, like, yeah, chopped celery maybe, or pairing it with a side of like Chinese broccoli is a really great option. As you know, we're always encouraging everyone to add more vegetables to your plate. So that would be a very simple way to do that. But that looks delicious. And give it a taste test. Yeah, one more tidbit of information that I wanted to share too was like with chives, green onions, the ginger, anything you're chopping, like I like to save on time. So if I'm already chopping once, I'll just like chop a bunch and you can also freeze that as well and then just pull that out whenever you need it. You can freeze it in kind of like a Ziploc bag, make sure it's flat and then kind of section it off so they're not like all clumping together. And then also recently at my Sam's Club, local Sam's Club, I found dried chives actually. And that's been pretty cool because I just sprinkle it onto like anything. I put it in salads, inside soups. And so that's been pretty fun to use. And cilantro might also be a good addition to this as well.
Unless you have the soapy gene, some people don't like it.
Yes, yes, that is a very good point. My brother
Yeah,
has that.
yeah, yeah. I actually know one person who she's really sensitive to it too. So, it's per preference. Okay, let's try it. Hopefully it's not too hard. Yeah, it's definitely very fluffy. It's not too salty. I would honestly dilute it myself a little bit, um, just because I like it a little bit cooler and a little less salty sometimes, but it's really good. So you can always do this at home. Very easy, very quick. Um, and if you like those Asian flavors, you're definitely getting that here.
Thank you so much, Jocelyn. That looks
Mhm.
delicious. And before we finish up today, I kind of just wanted to do a little bit of a run through of how you can find specific recipes on Eat Love. So when you're in your portal, when you go to these three lines to the right, you can always do a meal search. So that's another way. Other ways that we've talked about in our sessions, if you work with us, is that you can kind of go to swapping and then search meals and recipes too. So from here, let's say you're looking for soup, you can type that in, it'll pull up a bunch of different options. And let's say you wanted to further refine this, whether by cuisine. So for today, it was a Chinese dish, or you can even select Asian. And then if I wanted to just say I wanted to be short on time, I would put that in, and then that would filter me a bunch of different Asian soup recipes that you could choose from. So remember that this is like that really great filter, and there's so many different ways to filter, and you can definitely spend some time to explore this and kind of look through that. But very easy to look this up. And then again, you can also just search by what you are craving. So I'll do it this way. If you go into meal search and let's just say, oops, I did feel like I was craving egg drop soup. You would just type that in and then it will pop up here as well. And then other cool resources that you can look through would be Nutrition Academy. And there's a lot of different kitchen tools like kitchen basics, time saving kitchen hacks. I showed, which I know I had a little bit of a technical difficulty earlier, but I was trying to show this fridge and freezer storage. Again, if you work with us, you know that we're always talking about making cooking simpler, easier, save yourself some time, and freezing things is definitely a great tactic to help cut on time. So there's a lot of great information on what you can do for freezing and then the time for fridge and freezer. And in general, I kind of like basic rule is like around 3 days, maybe a little bit more for some things, but I kind of just stick with that so that you don't necessarily always have to refer to this. And then I know Jocelyn was showing us some cooking methods or cooking skills. And if you see a recipe and you're not really sure what it means, they also have information on that as well. And then I believe Nutrition Academy, you can also see the information on food safety, food prep again, and then like different conditions, videos, how to slice certain things. So if you're a little bit more basic on those levels too, and you want to enhance that, they also have a bunch of great resources. So lots of good stuff here for you to look through. All right. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below, type it in the chat, or send me a message on Practice Better or on EatLove. But I really appreciate all of you who have joined us here live today or watching the replay, and we will see you next time. Thank you.